My name is Sarah Catherine Adams, but I go by Sally. And I grew up in Westminster, Maryland. I was born in Baltimore, but lived on East Main Street, down by where Huffman's Inn and Cocky's Tavern is. My mother and father and my grandmother lived in the house along with our dog. And we played in the neighborhoods when we were kids. We had around where the American Legion is, and back on Green Street. I had friends that I grew up with that were across the alley from me. And the old GI laundry was down there, and we used to ride around in those big laundry cartons. They were full of soap, and they'd clean them out, and we would roll down hills in them when we were kids at where Eagle Oil is now. It used to be like an old gas station over there. So we sort of had the perimeter of that part of the block where we played by the American Legion and around, down by the Historical Society.
What'd you do in the winter then?
In the winter we went sledding. And we would find the biggest hill that we could find, probably over around, I guess it was George Street, which was, it was big for us, I guess. And then we would go ice skating out at the community pond.
Were the winters real cold?
The winters were terrible.
A lot of snow?
A lot of snow. I think one time it snowed for 4 days. And they had the drifts were so high that they lost some snow plows out by Washington Road. They were down in a low-lying area, of course.
What about your school?
I went to school in Westminster. Went to all through school, the early years, and which is where it's where East End was. It's where the YMCA has just bought that building now. So that was where we went through 1 through 4, I think, or 5 or 6. Then we did the elementary school, which was over close to the county office building, and then went to junior high, which is where West Middle is now, for 1 year. And then I ended up going to high school where I think it's East Middle now, the old brick school that's sort of up on the hill with the track. And we didn't have air conditioning, so we had all the windows were open in the summertime. And I walked to all my schools. So
did they have buses?
They did have buses. There were kids that would come in, from the country. I had friends that came up from Sandy Mount. But all the kids that lived in town just walked to school. So it was kind of fun. We went sledding up at Western Maryland, too, which is now McDaniel. And all the teachers, everybody knew everybody, of course, being such a small town at the time.
How'd your parents come to live here?
My mom was from New Windsor originally, but her family moved to Westminster when she was 6 months old. And her father was in the funeral business, Bankert Funeral Home, which was Harvey Bankert. And then his son was David A. Bankert, so it was Bankert Funeral Home. She lived there. That was further down on Main Street. And she met my dad in Baltimore when she was in nursing. Then in Union Memorial School of Nursing. And then they moved up here before I was born.
So she worked outside of the house?
She did, yeah. And then later on, after my dad died, when I was 14, she went back to nursing and went to work at the hospital when it first opened. I can't remember if that was 63 or 64, maybe earlier than that. She was the first unit clerk, ward clerk at the hospital. And then she worked for some doctors locally, some Dr. Welliver, and who's passed, and Dr. Dalrymple, who's passed, and my mom has passed.
Yeah.
But
do you have relatives still in the area?
I do. I have some cousins, but no siblings. So,
where did you go to church?
Went to St. Paul's United Church of Christ up on the square, up at Belgrove Square. And right now I sort of just go to different churches. There's different places. I love the Ascension Church, the little stone church. It's really charming. It's small.
What's changed the most about the town since you were growing up?
The developing, yeah, mostly the countryside that's gone, and the fields that are gone.
But how would you describe it to somebody who hasn't ever been here?
Well, it's still a beautiful part of the state, I think. You know, it's mostly, I guess, agricultural. And so for someone coming in, it still has a lot of open space. But, you know, for somebody that's seen it change so much. I was gone for 25 years. I left in '69 and came back in '96 to stay. And so in that time, I saw a lot of change. 140 was pretty small when, you know, back when we were in school. There were several places where we all would go, and, you know, the high school kids would hang out. And Balkers was another place where the high school kids would hang out.
Was Hoffman's around?
Huffman's was around, yeah. Yeah, it was
Did the
mostly
kids
an
hang out
orchard.
there?
We didn't hang out there so much. I didn't, anyway. I'm sure there were some people that did. I think it was just an ice cream stand, basically, in an orchard.
What were the weekends like when you were in high school?
You know, I think we had like dances. There would be like record hops that people would go to, and it would, you know, it would be church and record hops and having dinner with your family. People, you know, didn't eat out, and my mother and I would eat at Huffman's Inn in the evenings. After my dad died and my mother went back to work, she didn't cook, so we would take our meals at the boarding house. And that was great because it was like a big extended family. There were different teachers that lived there and different people that would travel through town or exchange people. Or
And then you could just go there for dinner
yeah,
if you
go
wanted.
for dinner. Thelma had dinner every evening, and then she'd have people that would come up from the city and eat on Sundays, and they'd have big dinners there. And we mostly ate at home, that I remember.
Now, you said your grandmother lived with you, too.
She lived with us until I was 5, and then she passed. And she was part of the Bankert family that had been in the funeral business.
Oh.
So I guess she probably grew up in the New Windsor area.
Was that unusual to have extended family, or did a lot of people do that then?
I think a lot of people did. I think it was just part of what people did. There weren't facilities where anyone could go if they weren't well or if they were not able to take care of themselves. You know, the family just took care of you. And I think that's sort of carried on the tradition, you know. I came back here in '96 to spend time with my mom, who was in her 80s and was really very independent for most of the time, but I was able to, because I didn't have any family of my own, to come back and, you know, have the time with her, which was really a blessing for both of us, I think, you know.
Yeah.
But for me, selfishly, it was great to be able to do that. So we were together 8 years, and then she passed, and so I remained in the same apartment she'd lived in for 35 years.
Now, are both your parents in the same cemetery here?
My mother was cremated, and I still have her ashes. My father is in a Westminster cemetery. So
Were there a lot of cemeteries when you were growing
There
up? Do you have
were.
recollection of the cemetery?
yeah, there were. When we were kids, we would drive around and go by the cemeteries. There was some sort of a strange, I don't know why that is, but I think a lot of people have done that in their youth. You know, there were country cemeteries. There's one that's pretty close to here I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's a small one where we would go and, you know, I don't know.
Some of the old farms have their own
They do.
cemeteries. I've seen the family plots out
Yeah,
there.
and some of the farms have people that are buried there that aren't even family members. That were like caretakers. So they've just remained on these pieces of land. But the Westminster Cemetery, that was the biggest one, and then St. John's. Those were in town were the two largest. All the churches had their own. Boss Church out toward Tawnytown. You know, there's some large cemeteries that way, but I don't know why it's so captivating, you know, to go by, and because there's so much history there, I guess.
Right.
It talks about the birth and death years. The Westminster Cemetery has some really old stones, some that even talked about the Mayflower, whether or not, those people were just descendants.
Mm-hmm.
And the Episcopal Church has some really old stones behind that.
Did you go to the movies?
We did. We went to the Carroll Theater and the State Theater. The Carroll Theater's still here. It's the Carroll Arts Center. Mm-hmm. And the State Theater's gone. It used to be over on I think John Street goes one way and Bond Street goes the other way, off of Main Street. It used to be up in that, sort of that corner.
Was that like a summertime thing to do?
Well, it was whenever.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were like a quarter, which was really telling you how long ago that was. But it was great fun. We'd go to a lot of matinees, a lot of westerns. Mm-hmm. And then when we were teenagers, there was, hit movies that came out like Summer Place. I can't remember some of the other, probably Dr. Zhivago. I think I went with my mother to see Gone with the Wind a million times. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was a big deal. And we would take the train also. When I was little, we would take the train into Baltimore to go shopping. I remember doing that one time when it snowed. That was pretty much fun.
Where'd you go grocery shopping?
Just small markets, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I think we had somebody that delivered milk and eggs, and I think there was like a butcher shop, and then the produce markets. Mm-hmm. And in the summer, there would be a guy that would deliver, call strawberries. And they would hawk their strawberries and their fruits in the summertime. Mm-hmm. You could hear them calling, when you were playing out in the yard.
Just going through the streets?
Yeah.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. So there weren't any major. There was probably one store downtown on Main Street. I don't know if it was the AMP. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what it was called anymore. Because we had a little market across the street at East End Market. So we would just go over there for everything. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much walkable.
Right.
There was nothing on 140.
So you went shopping every day, maybe?
Probably.
Instead of once a week?
Mm-hmm. And then people had, gardens. A lot of gardens, a lot of fresh produce, and chickens, poultry. Everything was all local, which is, I think they're trying to get back to that some, which is great. Not have so many things shipped in from all over. I don't know that they did that. I guess they did, but I don't really remember that.
Not like it is today.
No, nothing like it is. And I think the food was so much better.
They say the taste is different when it's fresher.
It probably does, yeah, because it takes days to truck some of this in. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it was fun. It was fun growing up. We would ride bikes out to where the farm museum is. The streets were different, and it was like a country road. There used to be an old pond out there called Thomas's, where we would go out. It was more like a pond than it was a swimming pool. It was kind of murky to swim in. And then I taught swimming at Frock's Sunnybrook Farm, which was out off of Bond Street Extended, I guess when I was 16 and 17.
A lot of people swim?
Yeah, a lot of people. People would have, summer passes, and they would swim every day. And I would spend the mornings there teaching life saving classes and preschool kids how to swim. And then I would help lifeguard in the afternoon, and then we'd have a dance party at night, so then we would end up back out there in the evening. So in the summer, that's what we did. And then the carnivals. Everybody went to all the carnivals.
Mm-hmm. And they still have those?
They still do.
Mm-hmm. Each little community?
Mm-hmm. They do, and they're all like firemen, the firemen carnivals. Mm-hmm. So that was fun. We always had a good time when we were kids. Things were a lot simpler then.
Right.
But yeah, coming back is very different. Are we okay?
Yeah. Coming back from where you had visited?
Yeah, I lived in San Francisco, and then I lived in Austin, Texas for 25 years. Mm-hmm. So seasonally, I think it was different also, just culturally. Things were very different. And I'd sort of, distanced myself from people I had gone to high school with. So it's just a small family, a grouping of family. But they're all here. Most of them have stayed here. A couple of my cousins ventured off like I did, but...
They didn't come back yet?
No, they haven't come back. No, they'll come back later, maybe.
Yeah.
It's funny how people do that. But I was lucky to be able to do that.
Yeah, you got to see the world, and then you came back to some place you were familiar with. And...
It was kind of comforting. And I think at that time in my life, I needed something like that, a little more stability or something that was more like home. I thought about moving away again after my mom passed and realized that I had, at this point in my life, I was more comfortable staying here and reconnecting with some of the people I had reconnected with. So, and still be able to go off if I want. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's been good, and I like working here. I like working at the village with everyone. We have a good team of people. It's a real positive area to be in. And
well, thanks for sharing those memories
well,
of Carol
thank
Kinley
you.
with us.
Yeah, it's been great.